Have you ever wondered how a Volkswagen Golf drives with a 6-cylinder naturally aspirated engine? Or how the very first Golf R drives? Or how the MK4, the fourth generation of the Golf, drives on steroids? Well, I have, and this is the Volkswagen Golf Mark IV R32, and we'll deliver you a full review of this already classic, not so old, about 15 years old, but already now a very desired Golf in exterior, interior, and of course this VR6 driving experience and some impressions of this year's GTI meeting in Wolfsburg. All in Full HD, full screen and full length. Let's go. So in general, the fourth generation of the Volkswagen Golf was built between 1997 and 2003, and here the R32 just between 2002 and 2004. About 12,000 pieces were built. First they started with just some, then had a lot of success, and then they went into series production, but still not so many cars of this one here out there. Deep blue pearl effect is the Thomas blue color, a real Thomas blue Golf. Yeah, that's really cool. And you can hardly get one now today, and it's already more expensive than its initial price at that time. In the front, you can see in the lower part, we have those bigger air intakes, round headlamps, even with a special turning indicator light in the very front. And they didn't know anything about LED technology in the front there at that time. And it is really a classic view in the front here, also with the horizontal fins. The fourth generation here is somewhat timeless, I think. Or what do you? 4 meters 14 or 13 foot 6 is total length of the fourth generation Golf. And this one here was about 16 centimeters shorter than the MK7 nowadays. That's half a foot shorter. Here the R32 came with 18-inch rims in this spider design style, very beautiful. Then also stronger lower bumpers right there. Also sits 20 millimeters lower, I think you can already see it right there. And only was built here as a 3-door version. You know, in general, the MK4 Golf is also available as a 5-door variant. And very significant for this fourth generation especially, this strong C-pillar, one of the core design elements that were carried on throughout all Golf generations. Do you actually like this generation here the best, or do you like other generations? You can also compare it in our Golf generations video, by the way. You can see how the color from the exterior fits to the blue brake calipers. And also you can see that in the rear here, in the small close-up, those springs also in blue fitting, so very nice detail. So in the rear we have the classic Mark IV form here. It's more form follows function, don't you agree? R32 logo and DSG, because there are two versions, the manual or the DSG. We have the DSG today, which is a little bit faster already at that time, and two real exhaust in the lower part. And of course, how does this VR6 sound? You have heard some of it in the preview. I would say let's listen to it again. And next to this blue diffuser in the lower part. So overall the styling elements, also if you compare it to a GTI at that point, were rather subtle. So it's more, you know, that you can still keep this elegant look, but of course sportier under the hood. So when I started driving, I also have been driving from the family a Golf MK4. But of course not this one, because here under the hood, R32. Why? It is 3.2 liter VR6, you can see here, it's not a V building form of the cylinders, but not R, not in a row. It's a mix between V and R, and so VR6. Why? To save some room, because you can see in the transverse mount of the engine, there's not so much room left. You had to really squeeze it in there. That's also one of the reasons why they go for the smaller engines today. It's easy to fit them in there. And this one here is still the real deal, without a turbo, naturally aspirated engine. 241 horsepower, that gave you an acceleration, or still gives you here, of 6.4 seconds to 100 kilometers or 62 miles an hour. With the DSG, the dual clutch transmission, that one does have a dual clutch transmission, unlike the normal Golf automatic at that time, which had a converter gearbox, which was, pretty lazy. Or 6.6 seconds with the manual gearbox here. And, well, those acceleration figures are a little bit slower than nowadays Golf GTI and nowadays Golf R. A little bit less than 2 seconds faster to 100 kilometers an hour. So if you think, just below 5 seconds then in the acceleration. So this one here, still quite good. Again, you can somehow compare it power-wise to nowadays GTIs. Of course, then the Rs have stepped up the game. So this was, or still is, the key. Also had electric control already at that time. See, it's a little bit grayed out, but I mean, this key is 15 years old, so it's quite okay still. Already at that time, nice closing sound. No, it was the top of the PH rain, or so to say. So they paid attention to quality a lot at that time, definitely. Then also the inside doors, this is all hard plastic. Here is softer here with leatherette. Then the sporty aluminum look inside of the doors. By the way, the motors of those side mirrors, they are very loud. They are not powered at the moment, they will be later on. Very loud. This is also one of the differences to nowadays Golf. The small electric motors are more silent. Then sporty steering wheel, you see, with this flat area on the side for better grip. Also with a R logo already. Then the seats, those ones are basically the most special operation with this vehicle. So integrated sports seats, here the integrated head restraint, and of course more shoulder and also thigh support. Looking forward to test drive them for sure. Unfortunately, it's animal skin, so nothing we can do about it anymore. But the nowadays GTI seats, for example, or Golf R seats, you can get a lot of different choices than without animal skin, and they're also even sportier. Here on those, you slide around a little bit on the surface, but the sides then really keep you tight, and they do fit also to taller people. That does work. The only strange thing is that they rise a lot in the front part. That's not that comfortable, so you lean backwards a little bit. That's also better with nowadays seats, definitely. You can see here now how the front area rises and the lower area is down. That one gives you a little bit more headroom. I'm wondering it's 86 or 6'1", still headroom left, and we also have a small glass roof right there. So the view to the front, by the way, we can soon see that, is actually quite large. So all the glass areas, they're a little bit bigger here in this Mark IV generation. And if you look just right over there, through or outside the glass, this tower you can see there is in the Wolfsburg Autostadt, where we also were with the Autogefuehl fan meeting, and about 500 cars are delivered there every day from Volkswagen. So you can get your car here. They are stored in this tower, and then you come here, for example, take a tour and get your car right there. No, not this one. The R32 is reserved just for me today. So this is the interior overview. This is a little bit soft touch, by the way. This is here like a punctured surface, and all original equipment, also with those cup holders here. And more buttons, of course, at that time, about 15 years old now. Interesting also with this original GPS system. Ain't that cute? You could also move the screen a little bit towards you, for example, and had a code. Well, I mean, Nowadays you would just use an additional GPS because everything is really outdated. And this Climatronic down there was already an automatic system. Then the steering wheel, again, from this perspective, you can see here, those small gaps, also with shift pedals in brushed aluminum. Steering wheel a little bit different than the original one. Classic analog gauges with a small digital screen. And in the lower part, some more aluminum cover than for the lighter. And this one here is the DSG shifting lever, also with a sport mode. We can test it out later. As I said, we also have this glass roof in here, also with an electric opening. Works like this. And, well, leaves some nice air here inside. And then you can also close it again. And the shade for that one is just manual. There's also like this half opening, and here you just do it like this. Since we have the 3-door variant, especially I smell comments, time code, Thomas in the rear seat. Yeah, you can do that. Let's test it. So the front seat can be flipped and also can be raised like this. Interesting mechanism. I haven't seen it in nowadays cars. Maybe it's just too complicated or maybe not safe enough. I don't know. But that way you can get in quite easily. Then look at that mechanism again when it slides down. However, Also, I can't really sit here when I'm also sitting in the front. This generation was shorter than the current one. Also headroom-wise, I do hit my head at the ceiling. And the 3-door variant also not so cozy here in the rear. So those very thick sport seats also cost you more legroom. You have to be aware of that. This is rather really a 2-driver car. One typical weakness, by the way, at that time, not only in the Golf, also if you think about the Lupo, maybe smaller vehicles, those, flippers there, when you just pull them, after a while they get loose and then you just have them in your hand. So this was one typical piece which was not meant to last that long. And let's check the trunk with this classic opening mechanism right there. And also, this 4th generation trunk had a very special closing sound. Sounds quite rich, doesn't it? Not rich in a money way, but, rich in like a food tastes rich, So, very square dimensions, so very well usable. Actually quite large also at that time for a compact vehicle, so very good to use. And I can also put a backpack in there that you can see the dimensions a little bit better. And you can also flip the seats. You can maybe reach over here or just go around, and then also have a 1/3, 2/3 split. But you can see as the front seats are that thick here, it's hard to flip them completely unless they are all the way in the front. That was, of course, easier with a normal Golf. So let's start Thomas's driving lounge. Classic driving lounge, you can say today. Well, it's not a old-timer or vintage car, rather a young-timer for sure. But here in the tunnel, there's maybe a good chance to test something of the sound. Also when driving on the inside. Behind me is also GTI driver. Well, of course we have to watch speed cameras here. Turn on the light. Yeah, you have to turn on the light. It's not always automatic. So maybe once more here outside the tunnel, and there's a little roaring there. It's not too sonorous and not too low frequency, but definitely something different than a normal 4-cylinder engine. In general, it does give you a typical Mark IV driving experience. Now in front of us, a Mark VII GTI that just overtook us there in the tunnel. So they're basically somewhat the same, but then again, the seating is different. You sit a little bit lower, suspension-wise, and also the different steering. So it gives you then a little sportier attitude. In the modern and newer Golf, you sit a little bit more, lower as for the seating. Here in the 4th generation, you feel a little bit more that you're sitting, on the seat, on the car, and in the 7 you're a little bit more integrated in the vehicle. At the same time, this has a lot of character. Also, everything is more square alike. You also feel that from the inside, that not everything is so much streamlined, also from the design, as we have with the cars here today. The suspension, by the way, is different than with the normal Golf. Yes, that's good, because the normal suspension is a little bit wobbly. At the same time, you can still drive it in everyday driving life, but suspension-wise, that's also where a lot of development has been taking place. Here, you know, on this road, Wolfsburg people will know it. You have all those transverse bumps, you also hear that. You feel that the suspension can be a little bit rough at times then. But you know, that's how the R32 is also supposed to be. But it's not that you would say you cannot drive this car in everyday driving life. The steering wheel, by the way, is also a big difference than to nowadays MK7, especially to GTI or Golf R. This so-called progressive steering is something they have developed over the past years, and then you don't have to steer that much. So here you still need some more power. You have an electronic assist, yes, but when you want to do a lane change, for example, you have to steer a little bit more than you would do maybe with there's a pen. Can you hold the pen? Nothing should rattle here on the interior. So you have to steer a little bit more, but the steering feel is for that still very natural. Have a good overview also to all of the sides, and also in the front, the wide windscreen. So it's overall a good experience. And when you mix those, let's say, normal cars with the sports attitudes, the good thing is that you can still have just one car, and it's not getting too uncomfortable driving a sporty car. So that's always pretty nice then. Already the sound installation, by the way, I mean, considering this is a 15-year-old car, it's relatively silent in here. Driving 60, and we're also going out to the motorway, but you already feel it here right now. So this refinement was also something where this fourth generation was setting new standards at that time. And that's of course something they can then also develop further. With the DSG, when you're driving a little bit slower, then you hardly feel any shifting transitions. Only when you are, you know, standing from standstill and then slowly rolling, then you sometimes hear or feel the DSG is, you know, not quite sure what to do. That has been refined now meanwhile. And then you can also go to the S shifting mode of the DSG. And this turns up the gears a little bit more, also changes the shifting, gets the RPMs higher. And we can show you that when we go now from standstill here at the traffic light. Maybe we can even, you know, show you some real acceleration here. I mean, we can go to 70. Let's go. Nice. Wow, that was pretty cool. So there you have the real sound, and that felt pretty quick, right? Really nice. And you know, you don't have this turbo setting in. Let's go to the motorway here now. It's at the same time really a rather harmonious acceleration from the naturally aspirated engine. Really nice. So now onto the motorway, pushing a little bit more on the corner. Yeah, so that's how a Golf drives with a 6-cylinder naturally aspirated engine. I mean, performance-wise, those modern turbo engines, of course, are even better now. This one gives you definitely a different sound experience, and it's hard to describe, but you somehow feel the displacement. Yes, there's no replacement for displacement. So when you're on the motorway now at 100, now you hear the sound insulation difference. And nowadays Golf is basically at 100 kilometers the same silent way as it would be with we were driving just 60 or something. But here now it gets a little bit louder. Still, the car gives you good feedback. Also, when you're here at 100, it stays relatively stable on the road. So that's also a difference. And nowadays, standard Golf is already very well to drive. 15 years back, the stand suspension was not sporty at all. So that made basically a bigger difference than to the sports version you had at that point. You know, by the way, when we're in the D driving mode or go to the S driving mode, directly goes one gear back. Fourth gear, for example, at 100 in the D mode. As soon as go into the S shifting mode, goes back. But what you can also do is use the shift pedals here, which are very well to use, and they move alongside with the steering wheel. Recently had a discussion there with the Alfa Giulia where they were fixed right there and not moving along with the steering wheel. I prefer to have it in that way because it's, you know, a little bit better integrated, I feel. So here you can also shift back then forth, third gear, and you can, you know, shift back, for example, before you get an acceleration or something. Also, we can test lane change at higher speeds. So here, good stability, good feedback also from the car. And what I also like, being a compact hatch. This compact hatch feeling is really cool also on the racetrack. I had the Golf a couple of times on the racetrack, and it always gave me a good feeling because you're so much in control of the car. And even if you're not a super highly skilled racing driver, you could always do something with the car. You know, it always works, and you know, it's not that exaggerated. So I think it's a good compromise here. Here, by the way, when there's a GTI meeting, we also, you know, seen the police getting some people out because, you know, some are here with their GTIs, which are maybe a little bit too low. Maybe like the wheels are a little bit more inward or too big or whatever, and so they're checking the car. So if you come here for GTI meeting, be aware that your car should better be legal, otherwise the police will pay special interest. So it's really a lot of fun with it. And you might wonder, a Golf usually front-wheel drive, but the Golf R then also introduced the all-wheel drive. So and this is of course really important. Shall we get on here again? I think we go back here. I'll show you some more on this Autobahn get on. Now at about 60, 70, let's push it in this corner. Really behaves very well, very neutral. Doesn't push me too much to the front. Really cool. Then you can see that you could have this driving experience also 15 years back. That's pretty amazing. So with this all-wheel drive, the good thing is, of course, if I would just have 240 horsepower over the front wheels, then we would just stop spinning, spin too much, and you would have a massive understeer. And also when I showed you the acceleration from the traffic light, we wouldn't have been so fast. So this part of the harmonious acceleration is also that we have the all-wheel drive, we're getting pulled in the front and pushed from the rear at the same time, and then we have a very good drive in the front, and also adds to the stability and the safety feeling you have with this car. So I think overall this neutral base you have, and then you add the sporty power and adjust all the things, that's the recipe. And I have to say, I do enjoy driving the modern Mark 7 a little bit more because you have a more comfortable seating position. The suspension is a little bit stiffer and at the same time more comfortable for both. And it just handles better. It's a little bit more, you know, it's a little bit faster, a little bit more silent from the sound insulation. But this one here, of course, does still have the character with the VR6 engine. It's, you know, a little bit different experience. Some more low frequency sound. They don't have this throttle, this DSG fart that much. but it sounds a little bit more sovereign from the engine. That's maybe one of the differences. And again, considering this car is from 2003, it's a really good performance they have here already. So this is the Mark IV on steroids, and pretty cool for sure. By the way, it's just 100 allowed here, so I'm not driving any faster. I would, if we would, I'll be allowed to, but not on all Autobahn parts you can drive that fast. But we can also show an acceleration, like how you call it flexibility also, when you, for example, at 70 kilometers now and go from 70 to 100. Plop, that's it already. So even if you are at higher speeds, still got this sovereignty from the displacement and also from the 3.2 liter and from displacement, and also from those 6 cylinders. So you might think, would it still possible to fit 6 cylinders in nowadays cars? Yeah, it would theoretically be, but then again, if you think about the current Golf, they always want to pay attention to the official figures, and they are usually lower when you pick less cylinders, even if the reality is maybe a little bit different then. So now we're getting off the motorway again. You can test the side support here from the car. Doesn't lean too much to the side. Again, good steering feel. And even if there would be some obstacle, I would be ready to stop. This is so much fun. And I mean, I've driven also so many, now hammering the brakes hard. It's also a good part of the test. You can see I had really a lot of reserves left. So always pay attention when you drive a little bit faster. But here also very good brake performance from those blue brake calipers we've seen earlier. What do you think about this one? Do you like this one more than the current MK7? Also check out our racetrack driving parts with the Volkswagen Golf R. They were pretty amazing. We also tested a manual versus a DSG there, for example, and also so much fun to driving on the racetrack, and I would like to drive this one here on the racetrack too. And now to our conclusion for today with the Golf R32 here from the GTI meeting in Wolfsburg. Very impressive. I always wanted to drive this one, and as I told you earlier, I have experience with driving the very normal Golf Mark IV, and it does, of course, remind of the normal Golf IV experience, but those sporty touches are of course fun. The biggest difference actually is really the steering wheel to nowadays Golf, especially in the GTI and the R version, which is way more easier to steer and more progressive. Power-wise, this one is already fun. The newer ones, newer engines are of course a little bit more spontaneous. This one here then, with the sound still, this naturally aspirated engine sound, which is then maybe the reason you could still go for the older one than for the newer one. But for everything else, I would still prefer to go for the new one because it's just so much more refined. And this is also a key finding. I mean, it is not a completely different car. You can really feel how the Golf generations had this evolution throughout the generations. And so you feel that even with this one, and comparing it with the Mark VII, they remain actually true to their core of the model. And I think that's basically a good thing, because you can really, step through the generations, see all the improvements. This one here, absolutely great fun and has so much character. This is what this car is defined by. A lot of character by this classic building form, also with a strong C-pillar. A lot of fun, but I think more fun is indeed to drive the very current model, where you can also find the review on Autogefuehl. So leave me your comments here to this vehicle and also tune in to our modern car reviews.